Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is mental wellness. And on the conversation on mental wellness, I want to talk about unconventional mindsets that will help you to develop that mental strength and dexterity. As I think dexterity is a really important word because it enables us to be adaptive, to be nimble, to be flexible in response to the challenges in front of us. And so dexterity is really the opportunity to use more than one skill to approach the thing in front of you. And so when we think about dexterity, like someone who's ambidextrous is someone who has the ability to use both of their hands equally, right? Most of us are either dominant right or dominant left, but if you are ambidextrous, then you can use both of your hands to right to do things, and it will be like the equivalent mastery, right? And so not all of us, not many of us even, are ambidextrous. But when we think about dexterity and having that ability mentally, it's really about having enough sense in your own specific skills that you recognize that it's not a one size fits all. Like a lot of life issues that will come up in all of our lives, it requires different skill sets, or it requires the ability to recognize that you need a new skill set. And so I think this kind of mental dexterity really helps you cultivate resilience, help you build endurance for those difficult times. And so I'm going to talk about different things that enable my own personal sense of mental dexterity. And they're unconventional in that they're probably not the things that you would think would cultivate resilience. And so the first one that I think is probably going to be the most surprising, so it's the one I want to say first, is feel your feelings. I am very big, and like anyone who's worked with me at any point in time will have heard me say this at least once. It's not just okay, but it's absolutely like mandatory that you feel your feelings. And so feeling your feelings doesn't mean express your feelings. It doesn't mean talk them out with someone, but it means you give yourself the space to be in those emotions. Because I'm telling you, if you hold space and you honor those emotions and you take time to be present with your emotions, by the time they settle, you feel much more in control. And so this is my experience, and I am someone who used to really shut down those emotions really quickly. Like I was very good at dissociating from my emotions. And so when I started to understand that I really did need to value my emotional self as much as I valued my cerebral self, like this whole societal convention around emotions being a sign of weakness was just completely untrue. And the only way that I could cultivate endurance and resilience and bounce back potential was to really pay attention to my emotions, because oftentimes it's not like how we think that is going to help us bounce back, is how we feel. How we feel is what enables us to bounce back either quickly or slowly. It's really our ability to navigate and to manage those feelings. So if we're not used to navigating those feelings, then they become really debilitating. If we're going through something already very big and we don't know how to manage our feelings, then it can be even worse. So feeling your feelings is important. And so when I say you don't have to express them outwardly, like I think a lot of people think that feelings are something that you express with words, and I completely disagree with that. And as someone who has done yin yoga for now the past 5 years, I've been a yogi since like 15 plus years, but in the last 5 years I've been really very focused on yin yoga, which is really focused on like deep emotional release. And what I recognize is a lot of emotions don't need words, right? Like you can feel your feelings, you can have a sense that you're in an emotional state without having to put words to it. In fact, like that mental exercise can be all the more exhausting if you're experiencing like really big emotions. So experiencing your emotions is just holding space for those emotions, sitting in silence, like having an opportunity where you're not interrupted, where you're not having to even have a conversation with anyone, and just sit in those feelings, as uncomfortable as they might be, as painful as they might be. And maybe you shed a couple of tears, maybe you feel inclined to say a few words or to write a few words down. Like however that translates, it just doesn't need to translate a very specific way. And I am someone who is fundamentally against this idea that we have to talk through our feelings. You just have to feel your feelings. You don't need to talk them through if you don't want to, but if you feel them, if you hold space for them, if you give yourself the opportunity to understand your feelings and to integrate. And when I say integrate, it's something that I even took time to figure out how to do. Like I was someone who very much intellectualized my emotions. Like my emotions, I had to filter them through sort of a cerebral lens, so I didn't feel overwhelmed by them. But it's only when I allowed myself to feel overwhelmed by my feelings that I start to cultivate mastery over them. So I think we start by first feeling like overstimulated, overwhelmed by our big emotions, and especially those of us who weren't given the space to feel our feelings as children. Like that's a mental muscle. That's a muscle that we develop or we don't, right? And it's not like we can skip steps because we're older now. Like if we were never taught how to manage our emotions properly, when we start to really prioritize that development, it always starts off feeling overwhelming and overstimulating, right? But the more you do pursue it, the more you cultivate mastery over it, the more you feel comfortable and familiar with all of the things that happen physically, physiologically, even sometimes mentally when you have big emotions. And then you can manage it. You can handle it a lot better, and you can handle it in alignment with your highest self. So you can feel like you've honored yourself in the way that you've chosen to engage with others as it relates to those emotions. So my very first unconventional, like, mental dexterity rule is give yourself this opportunity to feel your feelings. Now, the second, I think, very important criteria to cultivate mental dexterity is really putting a threshold on external validation. And I say that so intentionally because a lot of us, like, when we have these big dreams and these big ideas that surprise people, especially the people who love us and care about us and want the best for us, it's easy to be discouraged if we're seeking their validation to start. And I think that it's really, really important that when you have an idea or a dream that puts you on a trajectory that might be the catalyst of you outgrowing specific communities, then recognize that your community are themselves going to be cynical and skeptical about your ability to even pursue it. And that's just because they see you where you are now. They don't see that you pursuing this goal, pursuing this dream is going to change you. It's going to activate new skills, going to give you the opportunity to align yourself to new opportunities. Like, there's so much unknown that happens when you start to channel your energy towards achieving a specific dream. And when you are in the known and in the familiar, trying to give yourself the motivation to embark in the unknown, like, recognize a lot of people are not comfortable with the unknown. They're uncomfortable with uncertainty, and they can be your biggest deterrent. And so as someone who really is very much like, I know my own mind, like, I know that if there's something that I want to do, it doesn't matter like how many cons are brought up, like, I'm going to do it. And then the lesson will be like the experience in and of itself. Like, I am that stubborn and that pig-headed, but it's always served me because I think my dreams speak louder than any of the voices of dissent that have surrounded me. And because I don't have many big dreams, like, I have very specific big dreams, and the more that I put my energy towards them, like, the more energized I feel. Like, I feel so motivated pursuing my dreams. And as someone who's very goal oriented, I recognize, like, it is such a big factor in my own personal sense of mental health and mental well-being to be pursuing the things that I want, to be engaging in areas that mean the most to me, that external validation starts to mean less. And so if you feel discouraged because there's something you really want to do, but the people around you are telling you not to do it, I think that rather than succumb to that discouragement or feel like you have to normalize feeling discouraged because no one thinks that you can do it, I think that it's an opportunity for you to recalibrate the amount of weight and significance you put in external opinions and do it anyway. And if in doing it, you start to feel the change and feel sort of the shift away from those communities, then you can have a better understanding as to why they were skeptical and cynical to begin with. I think a lot of people are very happy to see you grow, to see you win in life, as long as you're not growing and winning more than they are. And as someone who has been confronted with a lot of envy and jealousy in my life for a myriad of different reasons, I recognize that not only am I not going to ask for permission, I would much rather ask for forgiveness when it comes to pursuing my goals, and even self-forgiveness, right? Like, if I do something and I do it wrong, like, I'll ask myself for forgiveness for not pursuing it more intelligently. But I'm never going to ask for permission to do the thing that, like, I feel inherently is something that I want to do. And I also recognize that pursuing goals really does create a shift, right? Like, pursuing something unknown, there's so many things that you're going to experience that changes around you, including the people, places, and circumstances that are currently familiar. They might be the thing that fades into the distance or fades into the past because you took that leap of faith. And I mean, I think that if we're focused on growth, I think life forces everyone to grow, whether we want to or not. Like, whether you're not really putting a lot of energy to be intentional about growth or not, like, life will cause you to grow. And a lot of that growth is growing away from the familiar, right? Whether that's people, places, or situations who are familiar. I think it's important that we all welcome that growth. And it doesn't mean that we have disdain for people who have stayed tied to the familiar. And it doesn't mean that people who have had the opportunity or the privilege of being tied to their familiar, that they're less, that they've grown less than other people. But I think that if your focus really is on being the best version of yourself, really maximizing your potential, then you have to really take into consideration that growth involves sacrifice. I've never seen two things work so well together. Like, if you are growing, then there are things that are falling away with the old, right? So it's not just like you becoming this new version of you and then the world around you stays static. I think the world shifts and changes as you shift and change as well. And that's a very beautiful thing. And then last but not least, I think when it comes to dexterity and when it comes to really pushing through different plateaus and different thresholds, I think that partnership is also also so important. And so this one is something that's new even to me, because I've always been someone who's very much an individualist, who does things, who does life on my own terms. But lately, like, I find that a lot of my emotional support comes from my partner, and that's because I have a great partner. And I think that it's just really important that when you are pursuing big goals, big dreams that come with big challenges and big roadblocks, that you find someone who supports you, like through the good and through the bad, who really does motivate you, encourage you. And when you are struggling to motivate and encourage yourself, I think it's just so important to have those kinds of people in your life. And I'm so happy I have my partner in my life to deal with the good and the bad with me, who kind of rolls with the punches with me. And I'm just so used to rolling with the punches on my own. It's so different. I see that we're really meant to be with others. And I've always kind of challenged this idea that I'm a social creature. Like, you know how like there's like this common narrative that humans are social creatures. And I'm like, well, yeah, well, I'm so selectively social. Am I really a social creature? Like, maybe I'm a bit of an outlier. But I'm like, no, like, I think that I'm just careful with who I socialize with because I've been burned enough. But I find that when you really find the right people to connect to, then that socializing in and of itself doesn't feel like so much of a risk, and it builds into your sense of dexterity. And so there you have it. Those are my unconventional wisdoms, like the truths around how you cultivate mental strength and that dexterity. And that dexterity enables you to be responsive to challenges in a way that enables you to push through, not just using the same tools, but really being agile and creative with what tools you bring about to help you get through those difficult situations. So if you have ideas of your own or different suggestions of your own that have enabled you to cultivate that mental dexterity, then I do invite you to leave those in the comments down below. Like, let's share. Sharing is caring. And if you do want to have these conversations, like, but more interactively, we host live events at least twice a month, every month for the foreseeable future on our website. We have an entire calendar for 2026 underway, but we do still have a few events left over for the end of this year. So we invite you to check that out. If you like this, but you want to like listen on the go, we also have a podcast. I really invite you to listen to our Spotify. I'm definitely trying to grow our community there as well. And note, we have parent-child workshops. So I believe that leadership starts while we're young. Like, leadership quotient is not something that we need to wait until we're adults to begin cultivating. So if you have children and if you think that it's important to cultivate this leadership quotient, like these leadership skills, we do believe that leadership is built off of 4 pillars. So cultivating a sense of self-efficacy, of compassion, of autonomy, and of self-concept. And if we have those 4 in place, like a strong foundation in place, then we can be leaders in our own right. So if that's interesting to you, we do host those workshops. They're digital, virtual, continuous learning environments that enable people from all around the world to cultivate these skills with their children at their own pace, with like-minded individuals who are doing so with their child from wherever they are in the comfort of their own home. So definitely check that out. We have something for everyone in your family. Thank you again. If you're still here, like, share. Every share does definitely help us grow the message. Send this to someone who needs some encouragement. And I look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. We'll talk to you later.